Hi guys, welcome back to Writer's Nest. I've been wrestling with myself on how often I want to do these videos, and it's come down to I want to do them at least weekly, or at most weekly, at least bi-weekly, because I figure if I go any longer than that, I will find a way to weasel out of it. I will ultimately find a way to not do it at all. Even this video here, I've had the idea for several days now, and this one I am just now getting around to shooting it. So here we are, and today I want to talk about short stories. It's commonly accepted in pop culture, even amongst writers, that one has to serve an apprenticeship, for lack of a better term, with short stories in magazines and stuff like that, newspapers, whatnot. But the problem with this is not a lot of magazines exist. I can name 3 off the top of my head: Fantasy, Sci-Fi, Ellery Queen, and Alfred Hitchcock. I have subscriptions to 2 of those, Ellery Queen and Fantasy Sci-Fi. So, you reckon, these magazines publish, what, 12 a month? 12 to maybe 15 stories a month, depending on length. At most, the last episode or last issue of Fantasy Sci-Fi I read had maybe 10. So you figure 10 stories per issue. How many do they receive? How many stories come across these poor editors' desks every month, and they only choose 10? They have to have like a mountain of stories for this. And to me, it's mind-boggling to have that much to read and have to choose it in a timely manner. And I don't envy those people at all. But reading through, maybe some of this stuff isn't my cup of tea. Like, I cannot read short stories. I get frustrated with them, right? I own all of the Conan the Barbarian stories in one large book. It's an ebook, but whatever. And I read one before I just shut that sucker, and I haven't looked back, because I was just getting involved with the plot. I was starting to like what was going on, and it ended. Like, boom, that's it, you're done. And I sat there, and I'm looking at my Kindle like, did I miss a page? Did they miss a page? Because I kept flipping back and forth, trying to figure out where's the rest of my fucking story here. That's why I can't read short stories. I get so frustrated because I get involved with these characters. I get involved with what's going on, and then poof, it's over. Like, and maybe I'm impatient, or maybe I'm too patient. The shorts, there's something, instantly gratifying about a short story. You can bash it at, you can read it in like 10, 15 minutes, and you're satisfied. It's like, I don't know, but maybe I'm too patient to be able to put up with short stories. Like, I haven't regularly read short fiction since fucking elementary school, probably. When that was really all that was age appropriate, was shorter fiction. I started reading Stephen King in fucking middle school. I was reading Cycle of the Werewolf. I was reading Eyes of the Dragon. I read The Gunslinger in 7th grade. I read The Stand, the entire unabridged telephone book brick of The Stand in the month of October, my 8th grade year. So I'm a long fiction fan. I love long fiction. I write long fiction, and I think that's why I write long, is because I read long. I want to build this world, and that's just not something you can do with short fiction. At least I can't. If anybody out there can, more power to you, dude, because I cannot do it. Like a short the Writer's Digest, I just got an email the other day. Writer's Digest is doing a short competition. And like the upper limit on words is 5,000. 5,000. I've, I've written chapters longer than 5,000 words, for Christ's sake. I cannot wrap my brain around starting and finishing a story in that few words, right? I cannot do it. So, and like I said, I think it's because I don't read short fiction that I can't write short fiction. I don't know, like from a technical standpoint, because I don't read short fiction, I can't write it. I don't know what compromises short fiction. You know, what makes it work, what makes it not work, because none of it works for me. So there's that. I mean, even the first thing I wrote, was I was in first grade, and I know I got the idea from Jurassic Park, which had just come out, and that was my jam back then, right? I loved dinosaurs. I still love dinosaurs. But I wrote this story. I still remember the title. It was The Great Dinosaur Hunt. And it was maybe 2 pages long, you know. There was no backstory. Maybe that's why, like, I can't write short fiction, because I get so involved with my characters and I flesh out their backstory, and I feel that need to have that backstory in there, you know, especially with fantasy and sci-fi. Like, I want to include the world. I want to build that world for potential readers. And maybe it's because my first exposure to fantasy was J.R.R. Tolkien, you know, and the king of fucking world building, right? He fucking created the languages, for Christ's sake. And like, maybe that's why I'm that way with fantasy. And so, but anyway, back to the Great Dinosaur Hunt. It was maybe 2 pages long. I probably could go back to it now, just with what I barely remember from these 25 years ago. Jesus, that was a quarter of a century ago. And I could probably rewrite it to be much longer. It probably wouldn't be good, but I could do it. But I can't do the opposite, right? I can't take one of the stories I have on here on my computer, or one of the ones I've run through the typewriter here. I can't go through that and pare it down to fit like a short story or even a novella size. And I'm okay with that. As I was saying, there's very little market for short stories anymore. And maybe it's going to get better with the internet, because I mean, I'm sure there are websites that you can submit short fiction to and maybe get paid, maybe get like a cent a word, which is about the going rate for most magazines, you know, 1 to 5 cents a word. Maybe there are websites that you can do that. And that'd be great. I mean, that would be amazing for authors of short fiction. But me, I jumped right from that short story when I was 5 to novels, right? I mean, granted, about 20 years passed in between there, but yeah, novels to me are more marketable, because I mean, people, and I've noticed this working in retail and talking to people and talking to readers, they like books long. Like video games. Video games have gotten longer as the years have gone by because of storage capacity, but books have gotten longer as well, and people's attention spans, people my age, are reading and writing and doing all that now, so their attention spans are much longer. You know, back in the day, when with, you know, the short stories, that was basically all you had the time to do. You know, you had other things to do. And now, because so much is automated in our lives, um, we can take time and read that fucking mountain of a book, or play that 70, 80 hour video game. And I think that's why books are getting progressively longer. Like, even since I started in retail, um, I've noticed, I walk by the books every day on my way to my department, and I've noticed the books seem to be getting thicker, or if they're not getting thicker, they're spawning series, like 50 Shades of Grey. That 10 years ago, that probably would have been, or 20 years ago even. I still think of, 10 years ago as like the 80s. That's just me. 20, 30 years ago, that would have been probably one book. And I mean, they might not even have been split into three. Harry Potter. I don't think, and maybe Joe Rowling has a lot to do with this the allure, I guess, of long fiction and long series. I mean, there are any number of authors that have been doing series. Lawrence Block has Matthew Scudder and Bernie Rodenbar. Stephen King has The Dark Tower and all the offshoots of it. And then Joe Rowling with Harry Potter and George Martin. Maybe that, because to me, Harry Potter kind of opened the floodgates for these series. I didn't know about A Song of Ice and Fire until Game of Thrones started. But it seems to me that Harry Potter kind of opened those floodgates, and trade houses were looking at what series do we have that's kind of in the same vein, but not really, that we can reissue and get fandom from. Before that, like, the longest fantasy series I knew about before Harry Potter was The Lord of the Rings, and that wasn't really a series so much as one gigantic book that they're like, oh shit, we gotta split this up. But fiction, to me, it really does seem that fiction has gotten longer. Maybe because the pulp magazines have gone away. They're almost extinct. Perhaps. I don't know. I personally, I find it comforting, almost, to write long. I'm able to flesh my characters out better. I'm able to tell their backstory, to get what I want, get my thoughts down on all these characters. And it's soothing, it's relaxing to me to be able to just run at the mouth. And I'm sure there are authors who would argue the same, or argue the other way for short stories. That there's such a creative fire in them that they gotta bash it out as quickly as possible, and the only way to really do that is with a short story, to get that story out on paper ASAP, right? Because really you can do a short story with one trip to the typewriter, or one, sprint at the word processor, but you can't really do that with a novel. And I do understand that. And I think that's what stops a lot of people from writing novels. Like, they feel like they have to get it all at once, and you can't do that with a novel. But you can with a short story, and I think that's why short stories, there's still that allure there, that they're like, hey, I can do this right now, and then, there's not as much polishing, or there's not as much to polish to get it up to snuff for publication, whereas I've been polishing the crap out of Sleepless Murder for going on 3 years now. Because I want it perfect. I want it as close to perfect as I can get it. And, I want it professionally publishable, up to snuff for professional publication, even if I don't end up going that route. Well, I think I've talked myself out on this subject, so I think we're going to cut this one here, and I'll see you hopefully next week. I'll see you next week on Writer's Nest.